Welcome to 1991 Movie Rewind, a podcast where we watch and review every movie released in 1991. From the all-time greatest classics to the critically panned and everything in between. We'll rediscover forgotten fan favorites and uncover hidden gems as we explore the depths of direct-to-video. Join us in our celebration of the fun, unique, and diverse films of this highly underrated year. This week, we watch The People Under the Stairs. Joining us on 1991 Movie Rewind. This week, to help us discuss our movie, we're being joined by our very special guests, Pace and Joe from the Horror Nerds at Church podcast. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm
good
Pace.
to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us as our very first podcast guests.
Yay.
Tell people at home a little bit more about Horror Nerds at Church.
Sure. Well, Horror Nerds at Church, is a podcast that releases every Thursday for the most part. We basically pick a film and a horror film, and we interpret that genre very broadly. So we have had everything from 1999's The Mummy with Brandon Fraser to like true hardcore horror. We talked about The Exorcist a few weeks ago, and right now we're working through the Friday the 13th series. It's a shame that there wasn't a Friday the 13th released in 1991, but I know that there was a Freddy Krueger one because y'all covered that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, if you ever do a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
It's so weird that there was no Friday the 13th.
All five.
Wow. Yeah.
Before that.
But
Yeah,
it's
because
so
don't
strange.
they have one like every year? Like there's a Friday the 13th, like almost
They
every
pumped
single
one out.
year.
Yeah.
They pumped one out every
Like
year
every
except
year,
for the
except-
podcast that you're doing.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Yep.
We have other franchises that we're gonna go through.
Yeah, there's so many horror
That's true.
sequels in
Yeah.
91.
It's
so
true.
fun.
Thanks for having us here, y'all.
Yeah.
But I wanted to add that this was all Pace's idea. A podcast never occurred to me. I just wanted to talk about horror movies with them. They're the ones who decided, let's take this to the internet and become famous.
Well, famous is
Okay.
debatable. But yeah, the thing that makes our podcast a little bit different from other horror film podcasts is that Joe and I are both theologians. We met at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. And so we take a deep dive for each film into kind of the religious symbolism and imagery of that film. And we are technically a spin-off podcast. So you can also check out our sister podcasts, as we call them, Nerds at Church. And they do
Yay!
more like sci-fi fantasy kind of stuff, but they're similar to us, except they do more Bible, whereas we do more theology.
Aren't we also raunchier than our sister podcast?
We like to swear and we talk about sex a lot and stuff. So
Okay. We
But
swear.
I think that's appropriate for the horror
Yeah,
genre.
yeah.
right, yeah.
I swear by all for one, by the way.
See.
Thank you very much for joining us. I love the podcast, and I think this movie is ripe for the picking for this. So,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I'll give
Yeah.
my customary plot synopsis, and we'll just be on our way then.
Perfect.
In The People Under the Stairs, a 13-year-old boy nicknamed Fool, played by Brandon Quintin Adams, gets roped into helping rob the house of the landlords that are planning to evict his family. Once inside the house, he discovers that something very unusual is happening in the basement, and neither he nor his two adult accomplices are able to leave. The owners come back and begin a hunt for the intruders. Screenplay by Wes Craven, directed by Wes Craven, and released on November 1st, 1991. So, I typically ask to start, Nikki, have you seen this movie before?
Yes, I used to watch this movie a lot when I was a pre-teen to teen years.
This is my very first time watching. I was very horror adverse as a kid. And so anything that involved anything possibly scary, like someone like jumping out and like grabbing you from under the stairs or something, was automatic no for me.
Yeah.
But Pace and Joe, what about you? Have you seen this before?
I've seen this once before, and the only time I've seen it before, believe it or not, was this year. So, um, it was kind of fun to come back to it. The first time I really didn't care for it that much, but rewatching it for this podcast and talk a little bit critically about it, I definitely enjoyed it more.
Oh wow. Yeah, this was my first time watching it. But I was aware of it as a I guess I was also a preteen like Nikki. I
Mm.
um I was aware of it mainly because the movie poster with a skull like on top of the house in the sky was so evocative, and it was in the video store. So like for a lot of movies that were released during this time, I actually had never like sat down to watch them, but I was very aware of them because the movie posters are plastered all over the video store, right? And you walk into the video store and some of these movie posters just stay in your head forever. I don't know if movie posters today are so memorable, but with the people under the stairs, I didn't watch it as a kid, but I was familiar with the movie poster.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way with a lot of the horror movies, and the horror poster was enough to turn me away from the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like if I saw in the back of a comic book or something, like no.
Well, and it's really funny that you say that, John. And I know y'all do trivia later on in the episode, but speaking to the point of the movie poster, so the movie studio literally had no idea how to market this movie, so they arbitrarily slapped a skull on the poster and said, "This is scary and it's a horror movie." They gave no indication of the social commentary or the satire that
Right.
it was
They
gonna
should have
have.
just showed the VC Andrews couple looking all scary.
Or just like
on the cover with
Right.
the guy in his gimp mask, and I would be
yeah,
like,
the
"Oh,
zip
okay."
mask. Yeah, that could have been a. I mean,
Oh
I think the
my
reveal of that
gosh.
happening
Because
was
there were like
probably.
no skulls whatsoever in this movie.
Well, there were a couple of like
There were,
I
yeah,
skeletons.
mean,
exactly.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, they were in the
yeah, you just
background.
saw bones and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of.
That bodysuit was epic though.
Yeah, the reveal of the leather
Go ahead,
daddy, I
John.
think, was too good to ruin
What
on
was
the
going
poster.
on?
You don't want that spoiled for you.
Right. But it's like
But they could have done like
what
a hand coming out of the stairs.
Yeah,
Like
they
trying to
should
grab
have
someone, like
literally showed like some
carry it.
hands coming out under
Oh.
a stairwell.
Pace, you
oh, I
were
was just
gonna
gonna
mention
say like
something?
that however many 2 decades before American Horror Story did the gimp suit, this was the
Yeah.
this movie premiered it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And Pace, while we were screening the movie, I think it was either Pace or me who had the idea that said that American Horror Story should just remake this as like an
Oh
episode.
Well,
yeah, I would watch that.
when Wes Craven
Yeah.
when he before he passed, he was apparently in the works to turn this into do a remake and turn it into a miniseries. So I don't
Yeah.
Mhm.
know what happened to that after he
No
passed, but
way.
that was
Oh my
in the works at
gosh.
least.
Can we have like a seance and bring him back, or is that too creepy?
I'm sure
I
the
miss him.
mother
Yeah.
and father would punish you for even trying.
Oh my. Wait! Don't you mean the sister and brother?
Yes, but they called each other mommy and daddy.
Mommy
Is it
and daddy.
is it
really
canon that they're
is
supposed to be
VC
brother and
Andrews.
sister in this
Oh my
movie?
god.
Well, yeah, at the end where the grandpa was explaining to Fool, like this family grew up. Didn't
Okay.
you pay attention to that?
Not to that specific line of dialogue. I was probably writing notes about the grandfather
That
at the time.
they're actually brother and sister.
Okay.
That's why I was like, oh, we're going VC Andrews with this.
Yeah, it definitely has shades of the
Exactly.
Flowers in the Attic.
Yeah.
Yep. Which, by the way, is
That
the
was our
first
very
movie.
first
Yeah,
episode, by the
our
way.
very first
Yeah.
episode,
Huh?
Flowers in the
Oh,
Attic.
yeah.
Mhm.
But this definitely shares some themes with the daughter, quote unquote, that's trapped inside the house. We learn later on that Alice is never allowed outside, has never been outside potentially. and is completely sheltered from the outside world. And in fact, anybody who enters the house is not allowed out, as we quickly learn.
Right. Yeah.
With Fool and Leroy coming in to inspect, well, not inspect, rob. As well as Spencer. They try to escape since Spencer was not able to. We can talk about that in a second. They try to go out the front door, and the doorknob is electrified. And I think that's probably one of our first clues that this is basically like a Home Alone house.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a direct inspiration for that, but I got the vibe of like, okay, now we're in the wet bandits are the protagonists territory, and we're here rooting for the robbers to escape this booby-trapped house.
Right. What's so wild though is like with Wes Craven is, if you remember the first Nightmare on Elm Street, which he wrote and directed, there's that whole subplot with Nancy booby trapping her house to trap Freddy as well. So it seems to be a reoccurring theme in his work.
Also, the subtle religious aspect of
Hear no evil, see no evil.
Exactly.
Speak no
yeah,
evil.
and
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
I don't know the name of the prayer that they have like videotaped at the end. You know, like lay my head down to sleep type of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, it was
the theologian.
It was
Yeah.
it was slightly altered from the version I know. Pace. Did you notice that mommy, quote unquote, says if I should kill before I wake, and I thought it was like if I should die before I wake.
Yep, that was definitely slightly altered. Made it that first of all, that prayer is creepy enough to begin with, but then when you change the words, it's even creepier. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Like I wonder if that was intentional to just like, position them as the crazy ones.
Yeah, most likely. Especially at that point, we kind of knew that they were the crazy ones, right? If you're talking about the tape recorded part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's also a subtle nod to Freddy Krueger, though, because if she's killing before she wakes, then that means then she's
killing
infiltrating
before I wake. Yeah.
dreams.
That is clever. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Give Wendy Robbie a spin-off.
Roby. Yeah.
Roby.
I mean,
Okay. Have we seen this woman in anything else now that you've name dropped her? I'm curious.
Okay, her and Daddy. They're
They don't really have names in the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it.
They have
so
they just have a last name, but
they
that's it.
they play a couple in Twin Peaks, so I know them from Twin Peaks.
Oh,
I love them in Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
so
they are
to
both
see them
really
in
great
Twin
characters.
Peaks, because they're a couple in Twin Peaks, and then they're a quote
that makes
couple
sense.
in this movie, and Twin Peaks, kind of ended around this time. So I think it's just like an extension of like their eccentricities, I guess, of like how insane their characters are in that show, and then also this movie.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's kind of a continuation. Well, I mean, it's clearly not, but like it's a very similar role. So it's almost like this was written for them after Wes Craven would have seen Twin Peaks or something.
Yeah,
I believe that is actually the case.
Wes
I think he cast
Craven
them
cast them because of like their characterization in Twin Peaks.
I was pretty impressed with some of the traps that were in there. I mean, they're relatively basic, but I mean, you have like the Simpsons stairs that become a slide.
Yeah.
And you have like the electrified doorknobs and the windows that don't break and stuff like that. But you also have like spikes that will push into the wall. That happens when when Roach and Fool are being chased.
Yeah, they have
and they have like that little slide thing inside the wall that the puppy Prince slides down, which I don't know if like Mommy and Daddy would have set that one up.
Yeah, I was like, who set this entire house up? Was it Daddy?
Yeah.
Making all these spikes on the wall, like was it for all the quote unquote sons that they were trying to want to raise?
My assumption was that Yeah, it was all just accumulated through the generations, right? Because when Grandpa was telling the story, he implied that this was like a generational perverseness.
Yeah.
So were mommy and daddy, were they taken as children themselves like Alice was
I
from
don't know.
their
You
grandparents?
were the one that paid attention to the brother and sister line of dialogue.
Well, that's what I was. Well, because you know how they wanted to find a brother for Alice, and that's why they have Roach and all those quote people under the stairs. That's why I was like, is mommy
Yeah.
and daddy also a product of that? And they grew up
Yeah.
It could be.
to be.
Maybe mommy and daddy, speaking of VC Andrews, are the brother and sister from Flowers in the Attic, all grown up, getting their own house.
Oh.
They escape and then they create their own
And then they
prison because
create
that's
their
all
own
they know of
family.
life.
Yeah,
And then they
exactly.
decimate a urban landscape.
Well, since you brought up Prince, would you would you consider the dog part of the booby trap system?
Ooh, I think probably not. He's just like another enforcer or a hunter that. Because
Yeah.
Prince doesn't know enough to lead them to booby traps. They're
Yeah, I
just,
think it's just as their guard dog or
Yeah.
attack dog. Because when he does, spoiler alert, die, the mommy said, we're going to need another bigger, badder dog.
R.I.P.
I
Prince.
do, yeah.
Although
I do love Prince's
I do like,
reactions. He's really good.
the dog that plays Prince does very good facial reactions. So, like, props to that dog.
Right?
Yeah.
apparently, according to the end
Yeah.
credits, there were 4 dogs
who
that played Prince.
Yeah. So props to all those dogs that knew how
I
to
know.
acting dogs.
Well, I don't know about you all, but when me and Pace were screening this movie, the first couple of attack scenes with the dog
Yeah.
didn't look like attack scenes. My first thought was, oh, that dog is clearly playing with them. But if you do the camera angles enough, it can look like it's attacking them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
movie
something
magic for you, probably.
That's something I
Like
read
they might have
about.
had just like a fake arm or something that was like trying to, or it might have even been like a puppet dog at some.
Like
scenes.
rolling around on the ground, yeah.
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 Well, I read
Just to
something
keep it
about
safer.
the
What if-
Twilight movies, like trivia about them. Like a lot of the Twilight. Apparently, the woofs and stuff, like they had to
Oh.
CGI alter their tails because they were having so much. The dogs that they were
Oh.
cast and trained were having so much fun hitting their marks and playing the characters and stuff that their tails were
Oh,
wagging the whole
no.
time. So they had to like computer alter that so it looked like
Yeah,
they
I mean,
were
we
CG.
more
watched like
aggressive.
a Cruella not too long ago, and there was a behind the scenes about how the dogs were handled, and it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a couple different dogs in there, and they have some scenes where it's clearly the dogs are completely CG,
Yeah.
which may have happened if this movie were made 30 years later for the attack scenes. They might have just done CG dogs
Like a
or
CG.
something.
Yeah.
Big
I mean,
names.
Twilight obviously
Yeah.
used CG for their.
Or even like going down
werewolves.
the chute, like they probably would have used like a
Like
CG
a CG
dog. Or
dog.
something.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Cruella, they
I mean,
had a nice mix.
I guess for 1991, Prince was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I really like the practical effects. Generally speaking, I think it felt like a booby trapped house. It didn't, because there isn't really like CG. That's one of the great things about 1991 is that a lot of the effects that are in these movies are practical, except for like T2
Oh,
or
yeah.
Beauty and the Beast,
Uh-huh.
where it's like sort of rudimentary but still good and integrated well. But most of the film still had to use like practical effects, which looks much more real and
Right.
visceral. So when you see like the stabbing in
Right.
the wall, or you see the spikes coming through, or people coming out of things and busting out of cabinets, then it has a much more impactful feel.
Definitely. Well, when mommy was controlling everything through that little switch panel thing. I thought that was cute, but I was also thinking if this movie were made now, all of that would probably be touchscreen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And you'd have a scene where like someone is,
talking
you know,
to an iPad or
they
something.
establish he's in a computer class in the first
Yeah.
scene, and then he's able to hack into the device in the third act. Speaking of that, I mean, Fool is the least foolish of the characters, right?
Mhm.
So he's the young kid. He's just turned 13 years old. For a large point of the movie, he's the voice of reason. Um, Except for when he decides to go into the basement alone while they're still trying to do the initial robbery thing. But in general, I don't know enough about tarot. I don't know if anyone here is very familiar with it, but they give
I
a
do.
little intro
Pacing.
tarot reading, and that's
Yeah,
where
the beginning starts with a tarot reading from Fool's sister.
Yeah.
and they explain that's where he got his
So
nickname is
during
from
Yeah.
the Fool.
Yeah, from the Fool card.
His real
From the
name is
Fool.
Dexter or
Well,
Poindexter.
during that opening sequence, I was peppering Pace with questions. I'm like, is that true? What does that card mean?
Yeah.
And I'm lifting up Pace here for their uh card reading expertise, because every difficult moment that I've had in my life in grad school, I turned to Pace for a tarot reading.
It's true. It's true.
So you can
I
tell
have
us a
to
little bit
say
more about
though,
what the opening tarot cards setup might have happened.
yeah, I don't. It really doesn't make much sense to me because it doesn't really get brought back for the rest of the movie. So it just felt like a weird aside or weird way to enter into the film. But it does. I have to say their meanings for the cards are pretty accurate. Oftentimes in Hollywood, they will use the death card, and they didn't in this opening, but they'd use the death card to symbolize death, and that's not what that card means at all. It instead means a kind of transition. Whereas here, like the one thing I would like to say that I'm surprised they didn't go into, because it would have made it a little bit more accurate to tarot, but also would have worked well with the movie, is that the Fool is considered the first card of the major arcana, so it is the card that symbolizes like a person at the beginning of their journey. And so if they were to frame it that way, it could have been set up in
Oh.
such a way that Poindexter is the Fool is like, this is a coming of age story for him since he just turns 13 and is able to basically become the provider for his family and rescue these children from this deranged family and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that's the only thing that I would say is I was surprised they didn't do that, but otherwise I was very surprised that the tarot readings were as accurate to what the cards typically mean.
Well, I love that nuanced understanding of the cards, especially for Fool, because I never thought of it like that in the way that you said, Pace. Like, a fool is a fool because one doesn't know anything, right? And so if the symbolism is you're starting your journey, yeah, obviously you don't know anything. So in that sense, fool has a completely different connotation.
Yeah, and they do allude to that a little bit, right? They say that you're a fool not because you're stupid, but because you just don't have the knowledge yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And they talk about him going
Exactly.
off into the sun, but only the boy part will get burned up. But they also mentioned the dog
Exactly.
in there as like a protector.
Mm.
And I thought that when Ving Rhames' character is getting attacked, right? So he's hiding behind the couch. Fool is used like a decoy for the dog. The dog Prince ignores Fool and then sees Ving Rhames and jumps over the couch and attacks him. I thought that was going to mean that the dog was going to team up with Fool at some point and he would become something of his protector, but that didn't come to
No.
be.
Yeah.
And so, like, the tarot card reading, which I
Oh.
hoped was going to be more of like a foreshadowing device, really wasn't anything.
Yeah, that's what was weird for me about it. It just seemed like a weird add-on, like a way to kind of introduce the characters and show the relationship between the sister and Fool, but like it just I don't get what it
Exactly.
has to do with the rest of the movie, quite honestly.
Yeah, to me it felt slapped on. Like the studio said, you need to make this movie more horror like, so do this creepy tarot card scene.
Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, you have the occult, which is still something of a fear tactic even in 1991 for some people with the cult tarot card readings,
like
and
a
plus it gives that
satanic
creepy
panic.
atmosphere over the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's something.
Well, it's
Yeah, that's something you were mentioned
Mhm.
when we screened it together, Joe. Is like you said that tarot is one of those things until recently you were uncomfortable with because of the way it's talked about in Christian circles and stuff. And now, of course, you know a few people
exactly.
who do tarot who also are Christian and stuff.
Yeah, well, the old Christian crowd that I hung out with in college, the evangelicals. And that's another story altogether how I got involved with those people. That could be another podcast. But, they really drilled into me that things like tarot cards were against God's will. Only God can tell you the future. Anyway, now that I'm 39 years old and have more wisdom and I am a non-fool, so to speak.
Yeah.
Your boy
I've
part
met
got
like a
burnt up.
great. Yes, my boy part did get burnt up. I think we should
Did it though?
Many ways to interpret
Oh my
that tarot.
god. I'm so I think I'm blowing out the mic with my laughter. Thanks a lot, y'all. But no, nowadays, I'm still a faithful Christian, but I associate with folks who have a much more inclusive idea of Christianity, and we believe that tarot cards are useful, tools to help us tap into the divine space where God inhabits.
Well, that's very interesting. I do want to talk about that because you go back to the subject of you wanted to, or you think that that was used to make the movie feel like more of a horror movie. And I know that we're laughing
Yeah.
at the gimp suit and some of the antics that happened here and there. I'm wondering, how intentional do you think the comedy was? Or is it just time has passed and some of these things are funny to us?
That's kind of what I was wondering when I was watching the movie with Pace. Like, one of my recurring questions during the movie was that supposed to be funny? Was I supposed to laugh? And like I felt
For
wrong like when I'm
laughing.
laughing at like for yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at something. But Pace watching this movie with Pace was amazing because they kept mentioning Mommy Dearest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why.
Especially when mommy walked into the bedroom to give the dress to Alice and mommy's all like, I worked hard on this better fit.
Yeah. I get like I feel like this was very personally my feeling of this with is and casting Wendy Roby as the mommy character. I feel like that it was really intentionally supposed to be campy and supposed to be this. There's a lot of slapstick comedy in here, kind of like Home Alone, like you're saying, like
Mm-hmm.
with
Yeah.
people falling into the traps and stuff. And I think that might be one of the reasons why it's kind of developed a cult following since its release, but I don't think it was ever a hugely popular movie when it first came out, simply because it doesn't really fit into a genre. And we know, of course, Wes Craven would go on to do more horror comedy with Scream, and that kind of more solidifies that genre. But I feel like this one kind of is a prelude to that kind of thing. And like I was telling Joe, like the mommy dear, I really feel like that's intentional, like this playing up of this camp type of character to just be so over the top that in
Yeah, I
excess
think
that
you're
it
right.
becomes
It
I
ridiculous.
was
think at least the mommy and daddy characters are definitely meant to be way over the top.
yeah.
Oh
You can
yeah.
see it from Everett McGill's reactions where he's mugging to the camera almost constantly. He's like peeking through the holes in the wall and making his eyes as big as possible and contorting his face in frustration or whatever it is. And I think the gimp suit is probably meant to be funny, but there aren't like overt jokes. Like no one's saying funny things, and so it's like situationally
Yeah.
funny,
Yeah.
which is tougher to get a grasp on.
I mean, it also kind of
Well, Freddie.
shows. Like, I got a little disturbed because I was scared that they like I was wondering how he treated Alice because it's obvious that mommy wants a daughter, but and there's like a
Mm-hmm.
part at the very end where he ties her up in the attic, where she's like, please let me
Right.
go. And he's like touching himself a little bit.
Mm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
has he abused her in any way?
Well, we see the physical
Well, I
abuse
thought
with
that
the belt.
But
right?
like,
But
I'm
yes,
thinking
I know
like,
what you're talking about.
No, I was thinking the same thing at the beginning of the movie when when daddy,
yeah,
I guess, when he mentions to mommy that he thinks that Alice ran off and probably already did it with Fool.
Yeah, in
yeah,
the
And
house.
so
Yeah.
he and then he starts to call her a whore. And I remember I yelled to Pace, wait a minute, these are children that he's talking about.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
what's
but I mean, clearly they don't have respect for children based off of
No,
what's in the
yeah.
basement. Uh,
Yeah.
I have to say there's some really, it seems to me that there seems to be kind of some convoluted framing of the mommy and daddy characters that I'm not sure is clear, and I think is just kind of sloppy personally. But like, there seems to be some sort of like queer sex coding going on with him wearing a gimp suit, like this kinky kind of person, and
Oh.
like villainizing that, because this is also in the era of
mm-hmm.
Silence of the
sure.
Lambs, where you have a transgender person who's villainized. And so it's kind of like that,
Hmm.
this is other and very different from what we think of as respectable. This very respectable family from the exterior, but when you peek under the covers, you see just like how kinky and out there they are. So there seems to be that, but there's also
Mm.
this really like strong undercurrent of them being like these very repressed sex people, because their
Yeah,
brother and sister, it doesn't say whether or not they are sexually intimate. It implies that maybe they are, or at least some people outside think they are, but that's also perhaps why they're adopting kids, because they aren't, and they don't want to have kids that are the product of incest. So it just really is this convoluted, like, what is Wes Craven trying to say about these people? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure he even knows, except to just like kind of show the take it to the extreme of like this type of white like, because this movie is very intentional about how it talks about race, surprisingly, in 1991,
yeah,
especially from a
Mm-hmm.
white
mm-hmm.
man like Russ Craven doing it. But like, this white family who is wealthy and stuff, but as soon as you kind of look under, and from the outside everything looks great, and look how well they get along with police, which in a Black Lives Matter is a very, has a whole different kind of subtext to it than it did in 1991. But I think it still was kind of hinting toward that, like the police come in and are getting along with these white people great, even though they were called
Hmm.
to help these other people in the house. So it's just, so that's kind of like my big confusion with this, is like, what what exactly is trying to be said about who these two people are? Why are they like, are these sexual deviants? It kind of seems like they are, but they also seem to be very repressed in their sexuality. They're very campy and over the top, but yet they're also kind of being played a little bit more straight, like they don't realize how campy they are, so it's not like this intentional. So it's just confusing to me.
Yeah, and like the cops are like eating their snacks and just like socializing with them,
Right.
and they're super they're super chummy. But Pace, I think you're bringing up a good point. One of the I guess one of the few things about this movie that we could argue is solidly clear is the commentary on race and gentrification.
Yes.
Those are very solid. Everything else is just mixed messages.
Yeah, we can get into like how this movie even starts where um I mean it starts with Fool and his sister and their mom. Their mom has cancer and they
Hmm.
live in a very, you can tell that their apartment building is, part of this I don't want to say ghetto cuz that's, I mean they call it that, but I don't like using that word. But
Right.
that's where they
Yeah.
live in these parts of LA, and they're going to be evicted by mommy and daddy because they are the evil landlords that just
Yeah.
they just want to evict them to make
Yeah, there's a
high rise
multifaceted.
buildings and offices to get
Yeah,
more
exactly.
money.
So there's there's a couple parts to it. One is that they missed their rent, and supposedly there's something in this movie where they say they have 3 days to pay triple the rent or they're evicted after
Yes,
missing
Yes.
the payment, which is obviously clearly illegal and probably just
Right.
there for plot convenience.
Yeah.
But they are also the
Yeah,
only
he
holdouts
also
in that building that are
Yes.
still actively living there because the landlords want to tear down the building and build something different.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it's
this,
like
you
the
know-
greed
Well,
plus
yeah,
potentially the race, which
Yes.
we definitely
Yeah.
learn is race
Totally.
with some of his commentary later on.
Oh yeah.
Well, and then the first appearance of Mommy and Daddy was right, or a little bit after that part, right?
Mhm.
So they cut to Mommy and Daddy. I think they were sitting at the fireplace, and Daddy was sitting in the chair eating some kind of scary looking meat. And I started laughing because I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, these are clearly the evil landlords."
Yes.
Like it was a bit over the top, but in a good way. I mean, it was campy.
I think the voiceover was kind of leading towards that too, right? Because they aren't actually talking. It's like voiceover explaining that the landlords own everything and that they're trying to kick him out while you see him eating the steak or
Right.
whatever it's supposed to be.
That's what I'm like. Because
I think you're led to believe it's like deer or something because he says
Okay.
like, "Oh, damn buckshot," and he takes the bullet out.
yes,
and-
but then I was thinking, because I know the people that come into their home, they feed, like, the pest control or whatever, they feed these people to the quote people under the stairs, and it reverts them to like cannibalism. And I was like, are they themselves cannibalistic?
they are, yeah. We see
But-
Daddy eating meat when he's like,
But is it
he-
someone that he shot? Or
yeah. It's either
it could
Spencer,
either be a person or an animal.
no, like
You're
when
led to believe.
when Fool
Like in
is
the
in the
beginning.
basement getting like tied up or whatever, he
Yeah.
has like either Spencer or Leroy hung up,
Yes.
and he's like carving meat to throw to the people, but he's also eating it himself.
Yes. So it's a person that he's eating in the beginning, is what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say.
It's either Spencer or Leroy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, at
In
the
the
very beginning
beginning, in the
scene,
very
most
beginning.
likely a person. Yes.
Yes. That's what I was trying to.
One of the people under the stairs. Har har har.
I don't know. I mean,
don't know. Like,
I
if he
think
was
that's
trying to
their
escape, you never know.
children. They're
Yeah.
like unwanted children.
I think the people under the stairs, if we want to get back to the race conversation, is also kind of interesting because they are made to be ghostly cracking white.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how that happens scientifically.
It's. I mean, I mean, they
They're very
have no.
zombie-ish.
They've never seen the light of day. They're like.
That's what I. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
but-
we're on the same wavelength.
That's still
Because
like,
I was thinking, I don't know.
there's
They
still
had-
like years and
They had
decades
no
of evolution
vitamin
that would
D,
happen
like,
to
ever.
make their skin
So-
that
Right.
ghostly white.
Yeah.
No, I was literally thinking to myself, if you stay in the dark for half of your
Yeah.
life or your whole life, is that what
That's
happens?
what I was assuming. Because I mean, they don't have the proper like vitamins or nutrients to have like a flesh tone
If there's
colored.
any
I
nutritionists
don't
or
know.
doctors listening,
Right. I'm
Right.
going to assume. I mean, and plus, the only thing they're eating is like body parts of other people.
yeah,
Right.
but I'm just saying, I don't think that would have led to that result of like zombie like facial cracking white
To look like- okay.
Yes. That's my personal
Well,
opinion
and-
because they have like zombie faces with like
Yeah,
weird
they
eyes
looked
and
at like
yellow
they
eyes
are
and stuff like that,
zombies,
too, so.
but they're living humans.
Mhm.
They're living humans and they demonstrate, a little bit of humanity.
Mhm.
And so, I'm wondering what is happening under the stairs exactly. I mean, do they have a little civilization down there?
I mean, that was the. I mean, it's like the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. It's like with Roach, he has his
Yeah.
tongue cut off, and I'm thinking like the other
Yes.
boys that are in the basement or under the stairs, they all probably were like made deaf or mute or something
Right.
because they did what Alice. I mean, Alice is the only quote good child because she doesn't do any of those three things.
Right.
So, like
Yeah.
with Roach, he was trying to get help, so they cut his tongue off.
I
And
think
it's
they
like
cut
these
all
other
of their tongues out
boys.
because none of them actually talk. And if they're real people, then they should have that capacity. So I think they probably all had their tongues out at some point. Just a theory.
Well,
Or
and
they just never
well,
were
yeah,
taught
I
how to
agree. Yep.
speak, and they don't know how to
Right.
talk.
Yeah, I
I
guess depending on when
mean,
they're abducted,
going
sure.
Yeah.
going back to the notion of, speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, as an idea, as symbolism,
Mm-hmm.
the people under the stairs works. And so if we keep them as an idea, then we get it. But then when we start to wonder, do they have a civilization down there? That's where it gets kind of murky.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't really interact with them. They're there as like a early scare tactic of like, oh, there's something creepy
Hmm.
behind these wooden boards. Um, and we get flashes of their faces here and there when the meat's thrown at them. But they don't really
Right,
figure into the plot
right.
until like the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're just there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering too if this is like a horror movie strategy, right? Because in the first season of our podcast, we did the Halloween franchise, and what we understand about Michael Myers is that his background is not important to the story. He's literally just there, and a lot of meaning is projected on Michael Myers and bounced off of him. And so I'm like, is that the same tactic that's being used with the people under the stairs?
It's definitely a draw, because if the movie were called something other than People Under the Stairs, it wouldn't have that same sort of mysterious appeal.
Yeah.
So you have that
Hmm.
aspect of it. I mean, if you just call it like Mommy and Daddy,
Yeah, if you called it
it
Mommy
wouldn't
and
be as
Daddy, you would be like, I don't want to see this. I
yeah,
don't know.
or Trap
Yeah.
House, even something like
Uh-huh.
that wouldn't have,
Trap house.
which has
I
a whole
I'm
nother
surprised.
connotation now, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised at the broad appeal this movie got. We were talking about how its box office performance was earlier. It wasn't a hit, but in Hollywood terms, it was solid.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a flop either. And
It
I'm
did
just
well.
amazed that, like,
So
yeah.
I mean, it had a budget of like 6 million. It grossed about 31. So I mean,
Mhm.
it wasn't like top 50. It was 55th place in the box office total. Um,
Hmm.
but I mean, for
Yeah,
a horror movie,
That's pretty
making
good.
like 5 times your budget is not
it
bad.
I mean, it also
is.
has like the Wes Craven name on it, and it's
Yeah.
just after
True.
I was also
doing
Yeah, exactly. I was also looking
Nightmare on
at
Elm Street, so they're probably like, oh, they're probably going to see something similar to that.
right.
Yeah, that's what
I
I
was
was
also looking at some
thinking.
of the box office
Mm-hmm.
releases before this,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
this came out November 1st. There's nothing in the top 50 of box office performances that came out in October. So like people are wanting to see something.
Yeah, this is around
It's kind of like
Halloween,
a
and
dead
people,
zone in
yeah,
the release calendar when this came out.
Oh, makes sense. Yeah.
Because
I
Freddy's
guess.
Dead came out in
Mhm.
September.
Yeah,
yes,
what's
Friday the
weird
13th in September.
what's really weird too about the there's kind of this horror fatigue that was happening at the end of this is where my horror nerd comes in. So check
okay.
into our podcast
Woo!
to hear this like every week if you're interested, or avoid us if this is boring. but um but like in the late 80s, basically a lot of people felt that the whole entire genre of horror had basically run out of steam, because between Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, you have these three big long running franchises finally starting to peter out. And then up until Scream is released in 1996, basically the early 90s are like a dearth of horror. There's not really anything that stands out. And even the Friday the
Mhm.
13th entry, which is Jason Goes to Hell, and Nightmare on Elm Street, the one that you watched that came out in 1991, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, like they're just not very good, and they don't quite reach the heights of what happened before. So it's like it felt like in this time period, the early 90s, there just wasn't that much interest in horror. And also keep in mind, with the Gulf War and stuff going on, like there's real world horror and stuff. So there
Mhm.
seems to be this reactionary kind of pendulum swinging the other way of like, I think we're done with horror, we can this genre has kind of run its course. And so it wasn't until we get that infusion of new life with Scream in the 1996 that there's kind of a renaissance of horror.
They even mentioned the Gulf War
Yeah.
in People Under the
Yeah.
Stairs. It was on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be more of a social commentary that was going to be part of the plot, but it was just that one little
Yeah.
bit where the people under the stairs are watching the news footage of the overnight strikes.
It's interesting, Pace, that you brought up the horror fatigue that was happening at the movies, because the dearth of horror movies that's being made for the big screen, it kind of opens up the way for TV to creep in and fill in that void. Because parallel to this time, we see Tales from the Crypt emerge. That was 1989 on HBO, and then there was later on a couple years after that, Twin Peaks. 1993, The X-Files comes in. So there's kind of that shift to the small screen
Oh, for
there.
sure.
We go back into a movie where Roach is helping Fool to get out, and Roach shows Fool where the money is, where the gold coins are,
Or at least gives him some of them.
Yeah, some of them.
Yeah, so we should explain who Roach is. Roach is like the only named person under the stairs who escapes from under the stairs and gets into the walls, but doesn't know how to leave the house beyond that.
Yeah.
And so he's helping Alice. He's building a relationship with Alice to some degree. They share food and whatnot, and all this kind of stuff. And so they're sort of helping each other. And Roach is played by Sean Whalen, who you'll definitely recognize the face of if you see him. But this is his very first feature.
I was trying to place that actor, but nothing
do you know
came to
the
mind.
Got Milk commercial?
Yeah, so most famously he was in the Got Milk
yeah.
commercial, where he has peanut butter in his mouth. He's
He has
trying to win a
peanut
radio
butter in
contest.
his mouth, and he's the Aaron Burr guy, where he's trying to say Aaron Burr, but he's got peanut butter in his mouth.
Oh my
And then
goodness.
it goes to the cuts
I know
like
him
Got
as
Milk.
Aaron Burr guy.
Yeah, so he's the Aaron Burr guy. He was also in Twister. He had a bit part in Twister. He had a part in Waterworld. He was in Revenge of the Nerds 3. He's been in a whole bunch of
Yeah,
stuff.
we can talk about that later, like what he's been in.
And he's been in
Yes!
Tammy and the T-Rex.
Yes.
Which we've seen.
Yes. I had to think about this a little bit. Yes, you're right. He was in Twister. He was part of the...
Yeah, he's one of the
yes,
crew.
yes.
So he's been in a whole bunch of stuff. Very, very characteristic face. So yeah, he helps them, and then he eventually also gets shot and killed by Daddy, but gives
he gives Fool
some of the coins.
And but Fool is able to escape eventually, and he shows the coins to his family, his grandfather and his sister, and his grandfather. That's where his grandfather tells the story of Mommy and Daddy.
Yeah, I was probably looking up his credits at that point.
The grandfather.
Yeah.
Saying
checked out.
Saying
Bill Cobbs will be in 3 other 1991 movies: Carolina Skeletons, The Hard Way, and New Jack City. But he's also in Air Bud.
But yeah, he was saying how...
That's where I know him
I'm
from.
I'm dying.
I like that movie as a lad. Okay?
I've not seen Air Bud.
But yeah, Grandpa tells the story of Mommy and Daddy, and how their parents owned a funeral home.
The landlord of
and then they
residences.
eventually just started owning other buildings and becoming, greedy, and saying how the coins that he got from their basement could pay for their rent for 10 years, and then also for his mom's
to like
cancer
2020,
treatment.
No, he says Yes, he said under the year 2000,
Oh,
and
in the
me
year
and Pace
2000,
laughed.
in the year until the year
Okay.
2000.
There you
So
go.
9 years, I guess, if we're
So-
talking about.
And
Until I Still Don't Know What You Did Last Summer came out, which is
Yeah.
what he's also in.
and I just have to say, like, I can't be the only one who felt this way though. At this point in the movie, I felt like the movie was done, and because he escaped, he has enough money to pay and his
Right,
rent and
because he
stuff.
escaped.
And then it's like
Yeah.
the
Me
first time I was
too.
watching it, I just kind of looked at the timestamp to see how much was left, and it's like, how's there still another half an hour left to this movie? What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Fool wants to
Well,
go
and that's-
back and save
Yeah, Alice
his
is
friend,
still in
Alice.
there. The villains have not
Exactly,
gotten
yeah.
their or their comeuppance.
Yeah.
So you can't leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah, the romantic side of me was thinking, oh, he's going to go back for Alice, isn't he?
Yeah.
I
And
think
he
it's really-
does.
yeah, he does. I think it is weird how he escapes to begin with, though, because the house is so much of a fortress. But yet there's just some random open window in the attic that
Well, because Alice
people
is
can get to.
afraid of the attic, so I guess they never really did anything with the attic because she's so afraid of it.
I mean, if they know that like Roach or whoever else is,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And then
and-
also the pond. I mean, that's an easy way to just go down.
yeah, and they said like when he comes back, Alice says one of the first things that Daddy did was to drain the pool or pond and put glass under there, but he didn't close the window and bolt that up. That's still open again.
Mhm, yeah. So yeah, you can still
why?
escape in a way.
little tiny plot holes.
Yep,
The
yep.
other thing that I found was really interesting is when they were hosting the cops. To go back to that really quickly,
Yeah.
the scenes before that, he's shooting up the walls, trying to
Yes.
get people,
Yes.
and yet the cops are roaming.
The hallways, and they don't
Yes.
see shot
So they're able to,
holes
like,
through the walls.
Patch it up. Or-
Yeah, I don't know what
Exactly.
exactly. But they have these weird, like, moving walls. Because, you know, when Ving Rhames goes, they first go in, break in, and Ving Rhames does something. And then this wall shuffles to
Yeah.
the side. And then a whole new, like, wall and room
So you
appeared.
think they had like
Secondary
some sort of
walls.
cover or
I don't
layer
know.
that they could put on top of
Yeah,
it?
I don't know.
That house was pretty, pretty functional for its time,
Yeah, it was
I
very
mean, I'm
high-tech.
thinking
Yeah.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
very high tech. I'm like, it could be a Tesla house.
Right? And this is like, I'm thinking the whole time the first time I saw this, I was thinking, oh, so this is where Ving Rhames learned how to break into high tech things in Mission Impossible from this house.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
I was thinking
well, you're
of,
better than I am.
I was thinking about the gimp suit and Ving Rhames. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh wow, you two are I guess I'm on the wholesome end here.
Oh.
Because when I thought when I saw Ving Rhames, I thought of how he was Agent Cobra Bubbles and Lilo and Stitch.
Funny, I didn't
But
put
no,
that down
you
on
all
my
are
notes.
thinking-
I go to his character as Marcellus Wallace, like immediately.
Yeah, y'all were thinking about his gimp suit
Yeah.
and Mission Impossible. I'm like, oh, that's Agent Bubbles.
He's going to be in
Well,
2 more 1991 movies
Yeah.
as well. So
Oh wow.
The actor who plays the kid.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him from Family Matters. He
Hmm.
was Weasel, a bully who was in the first season.
he was very active around this time, and then he kind of just stopped acting as a kid. He wanted to have like a normal life at some point, but he was in The Mighty Ducks, which is how I knew
Good
him,
choice.
and also
Oh, right.
Sandlot,
Yeah.
which is another major role for him.
Yeah.
And he was also in Moonwalker, which I've
Yeah.
never seen, but he
I
has a
was
prominent role
obsessed
in
with
Moonwalker.
Moonwalker, so I remember he was one of the kids that wanted to help out Annie. I don't know if you remember, like,
I never
Smooth.
saw it.
Oh, okay. There's the Smooth,
I never
like
saw
the
it either.
Smooth Criminal video. He's in it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So like isn't the aesthetic kind of similar with him and the zombie people under the stairs?
He has done some stuff here and there, like he's done a
Yeah.
voice in Kingdom Hearts 2, for
Yeah.
instance.
Uh-huh.
And he still maintained friendships with some of the people, and he was actually in the car when another fellow child actor, the guy who played Rudy's boyfriend in the Cosby Show, I forget his name off the top of my head, he was
Oh
murdered,
wow.
and he was in the car when the person came up and murdered him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still sort of like in the scene,
Holy
even if he wasn't
cow.
acting. He was, still
Oh my!
amongst that group. So he's
I
he's
vaguely
had a life.
remember
Yeah.
that. Wow. Yeah. No, I remember that story. Just haven't thought of it in quite a while. Wow. Interesting. Well, I remember. So me and Pace were screening this movie and texting each other our comments, and Pace reacted with a bunch of exclamation marks when I pointed out that I recognized the gal playing Alice,
Rayanne Graff.
who, who later appeared on My So-Called Life, playing Rayanne Graff, and is now literally a princess.
See.
Yeah.
She married into royalty.
I love it.
So
And
AJ Langer.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
her name.
John has never seen My
Yeah.
So-Called
I've
Life,
never
so
seen
I
My
was
So-Called
like,
Life.
you don't know what I'm talking about.
It was so angsty and beautiful to watch as a middle schooler.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a blind
Yeah.
spot.
I mean, we can watch this on Hulu if you want.
Yeah,
It is.
We'll also
and it's
see
only
her
like
in the
11
1991,
episodes.
Yeah.
1991 movie, And You Thought Your Parents Were Weird.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun comparison, because that's like a goofy alien parent comedy for kids, and so she has crazy parents in both movies.
Yeah, back to the
I may vaguely remember that.
So yeah, like back to the movie. So Grandpa is telling Fool about the lore of Mommy and Daddy, and then saying how Alice is not truly their daughter, that she was stolen as a child or a baby maybe, and then
Yeah.
they want to raise her as their own. And that's when he goes in and saves her, and then he tells her, once he finds her, he tells her, you are not their daughter, and tries to help her escape.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when Mommy and Daddy find out that Fool's back in the house, and they want to kill Fool.
Yeah, I forget exactly how they find out that he is back in the house, but they do lure him with that tape of that prayer, the "When I Lay Me Down to Sleep" prayer. They have like a tape playing in the bed, and he thinks he's able to, because he has like a shotgun, I think, at that point.
Yeah,
right?
he's there to kill them. Yeah. To get their,
And
and he
another-
also knows about the money, so he wants to get the money and save Alice.
Yeah, because they found the gold coins. The rumor is true. The whole thing is, Spencer, who gets killed off very early on, Leroy and Fool are there to rob these gold coins that are supposedly like this mythical thing that this family has. They find out that they're true, especially with Roach's help. And now he's back for the money, and also to save Alice, primarily at that point. And he's able to get a gun. And there's this weird standoff at some point where Fool is in the basement. He's on the stairs, which he knows will turn into a slide.
Yes.
Daddy opens the door, and Fool does not shoot him right away. And instead, he gets slid down the stairs again.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, this is one of the biggest problems I have with a lot of movies, is that the heroes and the villains both hesitate, and they will, say
like every movie.
words instead of actually do the thing that would resolve the problem.
Yeah, there are so many times where one of them could have been killed, like, immediately.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, both sides.
Yeah, both sides.
But they choose to prolong it for whatever torture reasons, or who knows what.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all the
And-
foreplay.
yeah.
You see him in
Well,
the gimp suit.
I remember
Yeah.
I remember reading an interview. Some Hollywood executive was talking about insider info, and they're very aware of moments like this, and they just kind of have to overlook them because there would then be no movie.
Yeah,
But the problem is that they can't think of anything more clever to justify why, say, Fool wouldn't have pushed the trigger, you know.
Mhm.
So so to us watching it as an audience, it's like, dude, you could have had him.
Yeah, maybe part of it is that it's intentional to make us feel smarter than the characters. So, we have that
Mm-hmm.
reaction. Because a lot of horror movies is, oh no, why didn't you do this? Why'd you go
Yeah,
that
it's
way?
always
Don't
us
go upstairs.
yelling, like, run away or
So
whatever.
it's another things like, shoot him, shoot
Girl,
him, shoot
you in
him.
danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just gets that reaction out of us, and that's intentional too.
Behind
I
you,
mean, to
behind
be
you.
fair
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
to be fair
Don't stand on
to
the stairs. There's a slide.
Mhm.
to be fair to the
Yeah.
Fool, though, as well composed as he is throughout the movie, he is only 13, and
Yeah.
as a 13-year-old,
Exactly.
I don't think
Yeah.
I would shoot right away if I saw somebody
Yeah,
even
Yeah,
with
I
a
think
life
it's
or
also-
death situation.
I wouldn't even
but-
know how to
It's
use
also-
a gun, so it's like,
Well, let's also go back to the race relations thing, which we kind
Yeah.
of touched on a little bit too. It's like you have this young 13-year-old boy who would be shooting an adult white man in his own house.
yes.
Mhm.
So you have that dynamic that
Right.
probably isn't going through the audience's mind, but could very well be going through Fool's and
Oh, for
Wes
sure,
Craven's,
yeah.
who's writing
Yeah.
the script.
I think, I don't think his intention
mean-
is to kill them. I think his intention is just to get the money and get Alice. Like, he just wants to
Yeah.
run away from these people.
True.
Well, and John, what you were saying just now is not a stretch at all, because I'm thinking of an early piece of dialogue between Mommy and the cops, where Mommy says, or the cop says something like, or Mommy says, "It's not fair. It's like we're the ones who are behind bars." Or it was
Yeah.
something really bigoted.
Yeah. I mean, yes. What Pace had said earlier about the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I think this is sort of a lot of these themes are coming up in 1991 movies, and I think we're probably going to see this more as we go into things like I don't know, some of the other like black led movies like New Jack City perhaps.
Yes.
But we
yeah.
saw it
Ooh.
oh gosh, what was the movie? I don't remember anymore. But like and also like Boys in the Hood, definitely.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Like this is like pre
Yeah.
Rodney
yeah,
King.
this is like Rodney King
This is like
era.
things people are starting to become aware about, at least in the mass culture suburb area, that the people who are entrenched in it have known for years, and it's just finally starting to trickle out into mainstream society and
Yeah.
will overflow in a year from now.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to
Well-
me when I watched
go ahead.
this is the first time, because the first time I watched it, it wasn't connected to your podcast. I wasn't thinking in my head 1991, but I knew it was early 90s. So I had to look it up
Mhm.
and to see if it happened after the Los Angeles riots in 1992, because it felt like it could be a commentary on that. But
Mm.
clearly this happened before. But I think that's just testament to like kind of the rising tension there, race-based tension in a lot of the metropolitan areas, and also a testament to just like knowing what's going on in the time, just as tensions continue to rise, and in the late Reagan, early Bush era, as the economy starting to fall apart again a little bit, and then so just I feel like there's a lot of like this is all kind of in the water as it's happening. So that's one of the
Yes.
things I find so fascinating about your podcast. 1991 is like, who would have thought that 1991 would have so much social commentary in a way that's still very relevant today, like 30 years later. So it's just fascinating to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
I
we'll
feel
see
like,
that
yeah,
quite
what
a
is the
bit with
word?
not only the race relations side of things, but also in terms of LGBTQIA space. There's a
Yeah.
lot of awareness that's coming out
Yeah.
from those conversations at the same time, because Magic Johnson is also in 1992 when he contracts HIV, and so like it's also on the cusp of that
Right.
big
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, we have had
So
a
it's-
discussion about like the AIDS epidemic around this time.
Yeah, so it's going to be an
And then-
interesting batch of movies to cover as we go on from that
Yeah.
standpoint.
And then remember, when the movie ends, that song that plays over the credits is literally called "Do the Right Thing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming was inspired by Spike Lee's movie in terms of the title.
Right.
Yeah.
From what, 88 or 89? So we'll hear that guy, Redhead Kingpin and FBI did that song. we'll hear his songs again in the 1991 movie New Jack City,
Mhm.
and that guy also acts in the movie Strictly Business.
Alice finds out that she is not their daughter. That's when, they try to find they try to Fool and Alice work together to try to get out. And
Yeah.
that's when, Mommy and Daddy find out that Fool's there. They're, shooting up the walls, searching for him.
And Alice had
They're
been
u-
chained up in the attic at this point. After
Yeah.
Fool escapes the first time, Alice is punished by being chained up in the attic.
Because she's
Yeah.
afraid of the attic.
And she
And
did not
that's like
follow Fool.
is that like a flowers in the attic? That's why I was thinking like VC Andrews. But
Yeah. And it's odd that that's the only place that they can escape, whereas flowers in the attic, they cannot escape the attic.
yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's like a kind of an inverse thing going
Mhm.
on.
So yeah, Fool saves Alice, and that's when, Mommy finds, well, Alice knows, all the ins and outs through the walls because Roach showed her or told her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when,
Well,
her
remember Alice was feeding Roach.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
see Roach's arm in the beginning.
And so then Mommy is trying to find Alice to save her because they think, Fool is coming after her. And Daddy's trying to find Fool,
Yeah.
so he's like shooting up the walls. And then Mommy finds Alice, and then she Alice. They're like they confront each other, and Alice is like, "I know I'm not your daughter," and that's when Mommy pretty much like beats her up, and she's like, "Go to hell."
Yeah.
Another Mommy Dearest moment.
Yes. Beats her and
Yeah,
says,
she
"Go
has
to
the
hell."
extreme makeup.
So then
too.
she goes to Daddy and she's like, kill Alice too, because Alice knows that she's not her daughter.
Yeah, this is the no more wire hangers moment.
Yes. And that's when, Grandpa and Fool's sister come to the door.
Yes.
To confront them as landlords.
Yeah.
But
Well, they know the Fool's coming,
what
right?
if
Yeah, they
Fool's-
know Fool's
So it's
coming.
also like sort of also to act as support or distraction or whatever.
Yeah.
How did Fool's sister introduce herself, or like from the society of people who are generally fucked
Yeah.
over?
And Mommy's like, what? I don't know. Her face is funny. She's like, what the fuck?
This is like
That's
the
another
most-
little plot hole, though.
Yeah.
Because when Ruby comes to the door, Mommy just opens up the door altogether. But when Spencer comes earlier in the movie,
she uses that little
she has a little peephole thing.
I mean, Mommy's already like she's already like frazzled from Alice, so she's probably like, what? Like she just opens the door and says, what do you want?
And I also love how this is like perhaps one of the most overt political moments of the film, where it very clearly seems like Wes Craven is putting on his socialism hat and like, this is the proletariat uprising, this is how he advanced this kind of thing. It like the whole community is gathered together against these two capitalists, and let's tear down the system.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was really hoping was happening, but most of the people just stay outside and watch.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Like, even when Mommy like gets up from being knocked out,
exactly,
and like escapes.
Yeah, they could have came into the house. And,
no one tells them, "Hey."
The house,
I know. Why didn't?
Who knows?
No one rushes her.
Stormed in.
Pulls her down.
That was exactly my hope, John. Because when the reveal was made for all the people standing outside, I remember texting to Pace, "Oh my gosh, the townspeople have come with their torches!"
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yeah, but they didn't like do anything.
No, they came with their matches.
Yeah,
but it's like all like Fool finds that vault with their. Scrooge McDuck money, all up in there.
With the help of the Stairmaster.
With the
Stairmaster.
The Stairmaster. Well, I think even though we didn't get the townspeople uprising scene we wanted, I think the point was very well made, because when Ruby and Mommy are bickering with each other, the punchline. Ruby says, we're gonna stand up as a community, and then Mommy's like, oh, what community? Ugh. And then all the people behind
Yeah,
gather up,
appear.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt so happy because I'm like, this is what it's gonna feel like to finally destroy capitalism.
And it's like, yeah, the people are watching, even if they aren't acting at this very moment.
Yeah, they're watching.
They know who you are. They are now watching you.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
So then we see Daddy finds Fool in that vault, and that's where they have like a standoff. You see that Fool has explosives set up.
Oh, before that though, Mommy gets her comeuppance though.
What's that? Oh,
Before
Mommy.
that, Mommy gets her comeuppance because the people under the stairs are let loose.
Yes.
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 And
They start coming through the walls and stairs.
And literally burst through the stairs.
Yes.
This is what I was afraid of the whole movie, right? Like as a kid,
You were
people
afraid
jumping
of
out
this
of
part.
walls and like out of the stairs, and like that's the reason why I would not want to see the movie. And here, I loved that it was like this twist of like it's not scary anymore; it's hopeful. It's like an uprising against the oppressors.
Uh-huh.
It's their liberation.
Yeah, it's liberating. It's not a scary thing. So I love that aspect to it. And they all rush Mommy, and
they
she
all
gets stabbed by Alice and tumbles down the stairs in a nice little homage to Vertigo and possibly Psycho. So
Eyes Without a Face. There was a really great tumbling death scene in that movie that lasted 2 hours.
so yeah, Mommy's gone.
Mommy's gone.
And then Fool creates his own little trap.
Yeah, with the explosives, and then he shows
and the candles.
Yes, that was a cool part with the candles and the coins.
Yeah, it really tricked Daddy.
Tricked Daddy.
no pun intended.
And
does not appear on the soundtrack.
No Trick Daddy
does not appear on the soundtrack.
Sadly.
Yeah, so Fool sets off the explosive that kills Daddy, and then all these coins and money just come through the roof and like everywhere.
Everywhere else. Yeah, the
everywhere else
explosions.
Out of the house. The explosions were just
they killed Daddy somehow, sort of.
But not
But
Fool.
Nothing in the house. The house is fine.
Yeah, that was weird.
Everyone else is
It
able
just
to
only
escape
killed
with no problem.
him and no one else. Not even the guy, like the men under the stairs.
Yeah.
But they eventually...
That house is indestructible.
Yeah.
It was a weird explosion.
And
sequence.
I mean, meanwhile, you have the people outside, taking money from that blast, and then it freed the people under the stairs. The end.
Then cue the song.
Yeah, cue the song. Do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Explosive
Yeah,
ending.
Yes.
Ha ha ha. Well, I mean, that's the thing though, that explosion for me was fun. It was also over the top because like I'm not used to seeing that effect in a horror movie. Maybe an action movie like Die Hard, which I think was around this time as well. But I just thought it was a interesting way to like end a horror movie.
Or even a comedy, like What About Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went over the beats of the plot, but are there, since you're horror nerds at church, are there any like religious themes or discussions that we have not covered so far that you guys want to get into?
I mean, for me, it was pretty clear as to be like too obvious, the people under the stairs or the people being oppressed, and everyone upstairs is the global north. And this dichotomy is essentially the relationship that privileged people have with the least of society. They try to keep them hidden in the shadows. Essentially, you're trying to exert your control over them. You want to be generous when you feel like being generous. So occasionally you feed the people under the stairs, or maybe even let them see a hint of daylight. And that's kind of what I think modern human society is right now. There's so many bad things going on in the world, but people would still prefer to I don't know, donate to a charity. Maybe they'll toss a couple of coins into a panhandler's hat. And it's like, there are people being slaughtered in like wholesale in countries. And that's just in addition to COVID. Like, we have to do something more than be charitable.
Yeah. And it this is kind of one of those, this movie really touches on one of those kind of theological themes that is near to and dear to both Joe's and my heart, because we met in a class called God and Capitalism. So we kind of, so
Yes.
it's kind of been in Joe's and my friendship has kind of been a recurring theme, is like just doing that kind of economic analysis, theological analysis and stuff. So with this movie, exactly like Joe is saying, there's all these things about capitalism, but then it's also tying this into this theme of liberation, of how one can be liberated
Right.
from their oppressors. There's this kind of communal aspect of liberation with all the people gathered outside. Then there's also kind of,
Exactly.
you have one of the things I like about this movie, which is rare for a 90s movie that written and directed by a white person about race, is to actually
Hmm.
have a black person be the protagonist and help
Mhm.
themselves and fix the problem themselves
Yes.
without having a white savior. So to
Mhm.
kind of take
Mhm.
that kind of piece too, like there's this element of what's the word I'm looking for, basically agency, of giving really
Yes,
giving a
agency.
person agency over their own life and their own future, to be able to stand up against the oppression and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of ways that ties into the Bible. I mean, the most obvious one, I think, for people who might not be Christian or know much about scripture, the Judeo-Christian scriptures, but still a lot of people at least know about the Exodus story, about the Israelites being enslaved in Egypt
Hmm.
and then escaping from their captivity, being led by Moses as kind of this gifted spiritual leader to leave. And so there's kind of this sense that Fool is this kind of Moses character, able to rescue these people under the stairs, able to bring together a community to stand up against the oppression. So I definitely think it plays with that trope a fair amount, and it also kind of ties into the tarot a little bit in the beginning, with the Fool taking his own destiny, which is one of the central parts of that card in the major
Exactly.
arcana, is like you build your own destiny as you walk through the ups and downs in life.
Oh, great, Pace. Now you now you planted a mental image in my head. I'm replaying the scene where all the people under the stairs, jump out of liberation, and someone is yelling, "Let my people go!" So that's the way that scene is playing out in my
Yeah,
head
yeah.
now. I also want to.
But
I
their
also want
tongue
to.
is cut out, so it sounds
Yeah.
different.
Yes, yes, it
Yep.
is. It is. It's kind of vibrating from their throats, I suppose. Uh, one of the things that so Christianity gets a lot of flack today, as it should, because the Christians who practice it suck. So we forget that there are basic, simple things that make up Christianity, and one of them is community. Um, when when Jesus becomes aware that he's about to die, among some of the last things he says, which is recorded in scripture, can be summed up as, y'all got to take care of yourselves. I'm coming back, yes, but you all got to do this together, while I'm away doing whatever it is I'm doing in the afterlife. So community is really central here, and that's why I like the bickering scene between Ruby and Mommy so much. Because Mommy's position, when she says what community, she says that with the kind of feeling that I would associate with big corporations and things like that, because their objective is to break down community so that we'll be powerless enough to rely on capitalism, to rely on the corporation, to rely on the institution instead of relying on one another.
Yeah, and I think also with mommy and daddy, they're obviously meant to be projected as the most religious, but it's also very obvious that they're not following any of the actual tenets of Christianity that they're trying to hide behind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're cherry
that's
picking.
something we really. Speaking of the connections between this and Flowers in the Attic, Joe and I, if you're haven't listened to our episode, to all of you listeners out there who are hearing about us for the first time, definitely check out our Flowers in the Attic episode, because it's a very interesting companion piece of this movie, and that's one of the things we talk about in
Yeah.
that movie, with Louise Fletcher playing this kind of matronly figure who literally is carrying around a Bible the entire movie but never opens it once. It's like
Never
very
opened
clear,
it.
like she's using Christianity just as a prop, simply as a prop.
Thank you very much for that. I think what we'll do now is just go into awards really quickly. There are a couple, all from the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards from this year.
Chainsaw.
That's what they call them.
Is this is a real? Is this a real award show?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fangoria magazine also
Fangoria,
gave out
yeah.
awards. Obviously not like a televised
Oh,
event,
wow.
but they do honor horror and sci-fi stuff each year. So this had several different nominations, but no wins.
Aw.
Best actor
Aw.
for Everett McGill, who played Daddy.
Mm.
He lost to Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. Actress Wendy
fair.
Roby also is nominated. She lost to Jodie Foster. Supporting actress for AJ Langer, who played Alice.
Ooh.
But that went to Christina Ricci for The Addams Family.
That's
Best
fair.
studio / big budget film. It was nominated for that as well, but lost to Silence of the Lambs. Screenplay for Wes Craven, lost to Ted Talley for Silence of the Lambs. And then makeup effects, that group lost to Terminator 2.
Yeah, I mean, those movies were just better.
Yeah, it's really tough to compete against, the really big boys.
Mm-hmm.
Any cast and crew that we haven't mentioned yet? We pretty much talked about everybody. I normally go through like a lot of credits and stuff, but we're kind of running long. I will mention that Kelly Jo Minter played the sister. We talked about her character name, but didn't talk about her by name. So Kelly Jo Minter, we've seen her before in Doc Hollywood. She was at the very opening. She was like one of the doctors in the opening scenes of that. But we'll also see her a couple more times in Out for Justice, New Jack City, and then also Popcorn. And she has experience with Wes Craven's Empire, because she was in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5.
Yes.
So
Really interesting.
I think that's the only person that we haven't mentioned by name and given some sort of credit. Something interesting about AJ Langer, actually. Around this time, she was in a sitcom called Drexel's Class. I don't know if anyone here has heard of this.
Oh my gosh!
I think Joe
yes, but you mentioning it is literally like when you find a really ancient object and you just blow the dust off of it.
Oh, like a gold coin in a basement of a crazy person's house?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. We haven't talked about that yet. But yeah, she was in like episodes of Blossom and Parker Lewis Can't Lose. And also Beverly Hills 90210 before she was in My So-Called Life as Rayanne Graff.
Oh my gosh.
As we all know.
But Drexel's Class, though.
So Drexel's Class I wanted to mention because, like, one, she shared... Brandon Adams was in one episode of that with her. So they had, like, a reconnection in that sitcom. But also, like, this cast is just packed. So it's Dabney Coleman is the lead. He plays Drexel, who has the class. And then you have Edie McClurg is in there, who probably most likely know her from Ferris Bueller Stay Off, but in a whole bunch of other stuff. Brittany Murphy is there. Oh, wow. Jason Biggs, Matthew Lawrence. So like it's a lot of big names that went on to have large careers. So, and one became royalty.
Indeed.
And I also do want to quickly mention Connie Marie Brazelton, who played Mary, which is the mother, because she had very little dialogue. She basically just laid in a bed the whole time.
Yeah.
But you ER fans probably know her as Nurse Connie Olegario.
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
Connie and
again, it's
Nurse
like
Connie and ER.
Yeah.
So I figured that
Yes,
might be a hit
now-
with this group.
Yeah.
Her face is now. Yes, her face is now materializing in my head. Good find.
I also want to mention that I don't think it's still active, but she also at one point owned and designed a jewelry company called Bonji Face with CCH Pounder.
Hmm.
So they were together in
Oh,
business.
no
I don't
way!
think it's active anymore. So that's a weird little side note.
That's so cool.
That's our short little
Fun.
pause on the credits, as we call it.
Nice.
So with that out of the way, I think it's on to move to true crime and pop culture.
Yeah. So, I
Ooh.
mean, we talked a lot about pop culture already. The,
A little bit.
and the only thing that I found that was true crimey was that this was based off of a true story, like loosely based. And
Was it really?
Yes. And
What kind of story?
I couldn't find like an article or anything because this happened in 1978. And I would have to go to a library like Helen Lyle in Candyman and find a microfiche.
Terrible confirmation.
Yeah.
Terrible because Helen, jumped into the fire and died. So,
But so yeah. So writer-director Wes Craven based this story loosely in part on a real world incident that happened in 1978. And it was a pair of burglars who forced their way into a home in an LA, quote, ghetto.
Oh, shit.
And when the police showed up, they made a shocking and unrelated discovery where the couple that was living there had locked their 2 children in the basement of the home.
Jesus.
And that led Wes Craven into this story where about Fool who lives, in the LA quote. They use this term LA ghetto,
Right.
so I'm just quoting that. And about his family who can't pay the rent and breaks into a mansion where there's children under the stairs or people under the stairs.
Holy cow. Wait a minute. So this starts out as your usual robbery / home invasion.
Yeah, but it turns out
and then
there's
it turns
children living in the basement.
Okay. That's
They happened in
wild.
1978.
Oh my goodness.
And then we sort of talked about this, but yeah, Wes Craven was going to make a People Under the Stairs series, and it was for the Sci-Fi Channel, and it was prior to his death, and the show never moved forward because R.I.P. Wes Craven. And but he said, and this was like an article saying that he was describing it as, quote, a contemporary Downton Abbey meets Amityville horror. But
I would have loved to see
I know,
that.
me too.
Me too.
But yeah, it is in the works that it looks like Jordan Peele is going to make a People Under the Stairs remake.
That'd be interesting. I think he could do more with the
especially
racial
what he did
component
with
to it.
Candyman. I know you haven't seen Candyman yet, but yeah.
And also probably the capitalistic side, because a lot of this stuff is alluded to, but you could probably take it a little bit farther with some of the commentary.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's good to know, because for me personally, Jordan Peele is now my new Wes Craven.
Yeah.
I will watch any movie with his name attached to it.
It's just very interesting to watch like Key and Peele.
Yeah.
and to know like how Jordan Peele is with all his movies. And
It's like Wes Craven though with Music of the Heart, like this hard right turn.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're good.
Yeah, I think that was just him wanting to do something completely different.
Right.
And what,
that
Meryl
movie was
Streep
very
got a
underrated.
nomination.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Very underrated.
So, okay, I mean, I usually talk about TV and music, but the TV that was on was the typical TGIF lineup, which we've talked about a million times already. But I'm just gonna, since like Joe mentioned Mariah Carey, I'm gonna do the top 100 for the week.
List all 100.
No, I'm just doing the top 5 of the 100 of the week. So the top R&B song was "Emotions" by Mariah Carey.
Oh man! Wow.
And then the top
Nice.
pop song was the song called "Romantic" by Karen White, and we usually put up the videos on our website.
Mhm.
And then number 2 was "Emotions" by Mariah Carey, and then number 3
Mm.
was "Cream" by Prince, and number 4 was "Do
Ah.
Anything" by Natural Selection. We'll put a video up. And then number 5 was "Can't Stop This Thing We Started" by Bryan Adams, another Bryan Adams song. That's not everything I do. I do it for
Wow.
you. But
Wow.
I mean, people are probably buying Bryan Adams albums because of that song.
I guess so.
Right.
If they have to.
John doesn't like Bryan Adams. I
I
don't
don't.
know.
His voice bothers me.
But he teaches you how to love a woman, how to really love a woman.
Yes.
But that's not for like 4 years from now.
I know. We don't know that yet.
On to rankings and ratings then. So we'll start with us, I guess. So Nikki, on your 1 to 5 star scale, where would you put People Under the Stairs?
I'm giving this a 4.
4 out of 5?
Yes.
Yeah, on my 0 to 4 star scale, which is what the typical critics use with the half stars and everything, I'm actually giving it a 3.5. I know that we nitpicked a lot of it. Clearly not perfect, but it was like much more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, so 3 out of 4. 3.5 out of 4.
Out of 4.
Pace and Joe, I don't know who wants to go first. I know that I think you typically use a 10
Yep.
point scale on your podcast.
We
Yeah.
do.
And we're doing machetes
we're on
right
hockey
now
masks
because
this year.
Oh,
yeah,
Machetes,
not hockey
yeah.
masks, machetes because of
so
Friday
maybe
the
1 out of
13th.
10 gold coins for this or
Or
something.
yeah, 1 out of
Yeah.
10
works.
gold coins or whatever.
1 out of 10 princes.
Or 1 out of 10 tarot cards. I don't know.
Yeah. Give it a go, Pace.
Okay,
What do you think?
I will rank this probably 6 gold coins and half with an extra half, so 6.5, and that half is that shadowy skull appearing over the house has nothing to do with the movie. And that's just because it's a solid movie. It's fun. It's goofy. It's silly. I don't think it quite holds up by today's standards, and I'm really curious to see what like a contemporary take on this with the Monkey Paw Productions would be, because I think there's like some
Mhm.
great foundation here for a great movie. It just the pieces don't quite work
For
for
sure.
me when you put them together. What about you, Joe?
Well, I feel like whatever Jordan Peele comes up with through Monkey Paw is going to be a different beast from this original movie. And my reasoning for saying that is I am giving this 8 gold coins out of 10 because of all of the many different themes this movie seemed to have. And for once I empathize with the movie studio's marketing department here. The one that stands out for me is like the adventure aspect. I love the kids, like they're caught in this house of horrors and they got to figure their way out, and I think that's a really fun cinematic time.
Yeah.
Well, we always like to say that every movie is worth watching once, but would you watch this again?
Yes, I would watch this.
I would definitely
Yes.
watch it
I
again.
would
Oh, yeah,
absolutely
for
watch
sure.
this again.
I if there's a special edition,
If
I will
it's like
purchase
playing at a movie theater, like a midnight type of madness thing, I would totally see
Yes.
this because I would like to see it in
Oh
a
my
big
gosh, that would
crowd.
be
Right? I think that would be,
that'd be a lot
I
of
mean,
me
fun.
COVID
too.
not, but
Yeah.
like that much is
Yeah.
withstanding. I think this is a good movie, like you're saying, Nikki, to see this in a crowd, because it kind of has like that campiness of like Rocky Horror Picture Show or something, where it's like
Mhm.
the crowd will make
For sure.
the experience.
Yeah.
Just as a quick aside with
Love it.
Against It is like, Joe and I are both part of the LGBTQ community, and so that means that we interact with things like Folsom and stuff like this, or Gay Pride. Oftentimes you'll see people
Yes.
wearing similar getup and gear, and so from occupying that world, that shit takes
Yeah.
a long time to get in and out of. So I am shocked that whenever he goes hunting
Oh,
for
yeah.
the kids, he's like this, he just instantly appears in this. It's like, how the hell are you putting that on so quickly? Give me your secrets, dude.
It's coming from the same skill set where they're able to make the house appear normal when cops come in
Yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah, it's like a magic trick. They have all kinds of quick change techniques that they learned.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you out there want to watch The People Under the Stairs, as of this recording in September 2021, it's available only through digital rental, VHS, or DVD. As always, check your local listings. Pace and Joe, where can people find Horror Nerds at Church podcast?
We are available wherever you get your podcasts, pretty much. Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all of those places. You can go to anchor.fm and look up Horror Nerds at Church there. They're the ones that host our podcast hosting service. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Horror Nerds at Church, and then on Twitter at HNACPOD, HNAC Pod.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah.
Hope you guys had
Thanks
as
for
much fun as we
having
did.
us.
Oh, this was great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and so as for us, you can listen to 1991 Movie Rewind on also all the major podcasting platforms. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends about both podcasts. You can email us at 1991movierewind@gmail.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd. Just search 1991 Movie Rewind, or go to 1991movierewind.com for the full list of 800 plus movies, along with show notes and more. Next week, we will be watching Kelly Jo Minter again in Popcorn, which is only available on VHS or DVD. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.